without further ado, I'm going to introduce Jarett, who's going to talk about the UPS pension system.
Thank you, Trevor. Okay, first of all, good morning, everyone. One thing that I generally try to do, I was up here about 3 years ago to do a similar presentation. I'll try not to step on toes up here as I walk around. And what I said then applies now. I haven't changed my style. As I go through this, I can bore you with details, facts, plan terms, everything else. Okay, that's the education piece. If you haven't heard it before, I'd be more than happy to go through the slides as they're laid out. But this needs to become a conversation. Okay, because for you to get something out of what I'm saying, it helps for me to understand if you are understanding what I'm saying. So let's make it a conversation. So if you have a question, if you want to raise your hand or you want to stand up to get my attention, I'll be more than happy to entertain questions as we go through, so you don't have to wait till the end to address your questions. The other thing I generally will try to do when I start out a session with a group like this, because it's a very large group, is try to get an idea of who's in the audience. So because most of my conversation today will be geared toward and directed toward the UPS IBT plan for the full-timers, I'm going to start with my first question because I've already had someone identify themselves. How many part-timers do I have in here? Okay. A lot of what I will say today is just by design geared toward the full-time plan. But I don't want to exclude you from the presentation. So if you have questions, or if I fail to draw a specific correlation or a fact out about the part-time plan, you're welcome to participate as well. We can stop and we can clarify between the two plans. So again, probably, maybe 10, 15, 20 people are in the part-time plan. Now the next question, how many of all the rest of you who are in the full-time plan were part-timers at one time? Pretty much the whole room. You might have an interest in some of the part-time facts too, right? And then the next question ties back to something Trevor said. He said he was happy to see all the spouses here. How many spouses? Can you raise your hand? Okay, put your hands down. Out of all the spouses, just raise your hand. How many of you are the money manager of the family? You don't have to answer that if you want. Okay. It is good you're here. It's excellent to have someone who is going to be taking care of the finances. And generally we find that there is one party or the other in a marriage, in the household, that takes care of all the finances. So it is good for both the spouse and the participant, the UPS, to understand the plan design. Because you are making a lifetime decision when you are making decisions about your retirement date. That's obvious, right? You make an election, that's a lifetime election for that payment. If you are, unfortunately, you're involved in a leave of absence situation, how does that affect that retirement benefit in the future? So those are all things you need to think about as part of your financial planning. And I won't steal any thunder from any of the other guys who are going to present today. But financial planning and the thought process isn't just UPS has a pension plan for you, it's beyond that. Okay? So I have one piece of that. I have the foundation, if you will. I have the cornerstone for your financial future with respect to your UPS financial picture. Everything else, Bill will talk a little bit about it. There's a central states component, there's a healthcare component, and you make decisions based on all of those things. Even to the point when you make your decision about your UPS IBT plan payment election, what is the prospect of you living to be 80 versus 90? What's in your gene pool, basically? So don't just make a decision that I want this dollar amount because it's more than the other one. Because if you are in healthy condition and you have longevity in your family, keep that in mind. If you don't have a physical before you get ready to retire, I'm going to tell you it's a bad move. You don't want to go to the doctor 3 months after you retire and get bad news, or the spouse gets bad news and we change your decision. So those are the types of things I'll touch on a little bit today. But this financial planning isn't just show up for work, earn service, and get your pension. I want to make it a little more complicated than that. Okay? All right. So, certainly.
Those of you who didn't sign, we'll pass the sign-in sheet around or put your hands up. Somebody will come to you. We need to have you sign. So, okay, thank you.
All right. So I always have a slide in my presentation to cover anything that I don't say correctly, right? I will do my best not to confuse you, not to say anything that causes misinterpretation. However, if I say something or you take something away from this meeting or there's something on the presentation here that would directly conflict with plan terms, the plan terms is controlled. That is just a disclaimer that we throw in every presentation. Any document, any conversation you have with someone, they're intended to be helpful. But if for some reason there's specifics not discussed or any misunderstanding with respect to that conversation, ultimately the plan terms will be the controlling document, or will be the controlling terms. So get that out of the way. And like I mentioned, we'll talk about two plans, pension plan and the IBT plan. So the first slide, I changed it up a little bit recently because we ratified a new contract. And with that ratification for the IBT group, you have a change in your service pensions effective 1/1/2020. I'm going to go ahead and say this, and I'm probably going to say it again before the presentation's over. The effective date of the change is 1/1/2020. When can you retire and enjoy those improvements? You have to work in January. You can't leave in December and then get the improved benefit on January the 1st. You can't be retired in November of 2019, because you want to escape that last peak season, and then get a benefit improvement on January 1, 2020, okay? So make sure, one of the things I want to make sure that you understand walking away today is that if you are right there at the door, you're ready to retire, and you're just waiting for the new CBA terms to take effect, you have to be employed by UPS in 2020, which means the first retirement check that anybody will get reflecting the new rates would be February the 1st, 2020. Is that clear?
Does vacation time count? Does vacation time count if you took the month of January off?
I'm sorry?
If you took the month of January off as vacation, does that count as working?
That
You
does
actually have
count.
to
If you
physically
take
punch in.
January as vacation, that counts. And also keep in mind that January 1's a holiday. You're getting paid. That's going to count. So if you decide that your last day with UPS is January 5, you're good. Okay? You might want to capitalize on those next 3 weeks with vacation if you have it in the bank or whatever. You might want to work maybe a couple of days. I don't know how hot the seniority list you may be. You may be given the opportunity to take a couple of days off here and there. But you can make a little extra money waiting on that first retirement check if you push your date to January 20th or January 25th. That's all for you to decide with your local management team and work all that stuff out. But from a plan perspective, the plan can't give you the increase that was just voted and ratified if you are not employed by UPS January 1 and later. Okay? And you can't terminate on January 1 and collect the January 1 payment. So we're trying to be very clear. My team is trying to be very clear at any phone conversation, anytime we're talking to anyone about the UPS IBT plan, there wasn't a speaker there, to make sure that you are employed in the new year to get the new rate. Okay, and those are service pension rates. Now, part-timers, I'll go ahead and clarify. You're already in. Okay, yours was effective 8/1/2019. I'm sorry, 2018. Okay, so you already have your benefit improvement on your service pension. Next point, just a historical fact, the UPS IBT plan was initiated effective January 1, 2008. We all are familiar with that by now. A portion of your benefit is payable by Central States in most cases. So if you were in the full-time driving job prior to January 108, that was time accrued, service earned, benefit earned with Central States. The UPS IBT plan picks up that time, that service amount that you had is 12/31/07. And that will become reported to you when you reach age 65. It has no effect on you prior to 65, except it's in your UPS IBT benefit. It's in that calculation that we perform, my team performs for you. The schedule for vesting is based on a 750-hour per calendar year requirement. So anytime you start talking about service, and I'll show you a picture from the retirement calculator, just a sample picture shortly that will tell you the 3 types of service that most people sometimes aren't aware of, or when they see it, they're confused by it. We'll do a little clarification there. But your vesting schedule, I'll go ahead and get that out of the way, which basically you have to have 5 years to be entitled to a benefit. But it could be 3 years as a part-timer and 2 years as a full-timer. As long as you have 750 hours in a calendar year, it's counting towards your vested status with the plan. Okay? The other type, or one of the other types of credit, is service credit. a little dated as far as the example down here, 2014 through 2018, but it still holds true. Any calendar year in which you accumulate at least 1,801 hours, that's going to count as, or that's going to earn you a full year of service credit. So we have vesting credit and service credit thus far. The service credit, and what I've done here is for illustration purposes, is in 2014, the person has a full year. The accrual rate for 2014, not related to service pensions, but the straight accrual rate for your normal retirement benefit was $170 for a full year of service. So on the right-hand column there, you see $170. That's how we calculate your benefit. The next year, 2015, the person has 1,650 hours. That equates to 10 months of service for 83% of a year, okay? So we would multiply the 83% times the 170 to come up with $141. That effectively is how Central States was calculating benefits based on contribution rates each year. So that holds true, although they aren't contributions like they were in the Central States world, but it still holds true that it follows the same structure. Each year, your service is accumulated based on your hours worked, and whatever the accrual rate is for that year gets multiplied times that service for that year. You add it all up at the bottom. So we would add 170, 141, all the way down to 5833. That would be the accumulated benefit for that person. That's how it works. Based on service credit, the normal retirement benefit. When I say normal retirement benefit, I'm talking about the benefit that is payable to you as of age 65. Okay? I'm not talking about service pensions, I'm not talking about early commencement, I'm not talking about any of that. It's a straight accrual rate that takes you to a benefit amount or a total or an aggregate benefit, inclusive of anything you earn with Central States. We add it all together, and that becomes your age 65 amount or your normal retirement benefit, as we call it. So if you ever hear those terms, or you see something on the retirement calculator website, normal retirement is referring to the first of the month following when you reach age 65. Or if you happen to be one of those with a birthday on the first of the month, it is your 65th birthday. Okay? Questions so far?
How does that calculate for part-timers?
Okay, good question. Thanks for reminding me. I have part-timers in the room. The part-timer isn't looking at an 1,800-hour schedule. The part-timer is going to earn service based on a 750-hour schedule. So if a part-timer has at least 750 hours of work in a calendar year, they will earn 1 year of service. If the part-timer has less than 375 hours, there's no service earned. If they make it to 375, between 375 and 500, that's 6 months of service. If they go 501 to 749, that's 9 months of service. So you either earn 6 months, 9 months, or 1 year of service in a calendar year as a part-timer, depending on how many hours you work. If you come in shy, you're 749, it's 3 months of service that cost you for maybe a day off or something that you weren't paid. So always pay attention to where you are with respect to earning your service for each calendar year. Now, I've been saying calendar year, but I haven't emphasized it. Actually, it says it on the slide. No, it doesn't say it on my slide. Yeah, it does. It's the very first bullet point. Based on hours worked in a calendar year. I can't tell you the number of times individuals will plan to retire on April the 30th to collect their benefit on May the 1st because they were hired with TPS 30 years ago on April the 30th. Okay. You had 30 anniversaries. So just for purposes of the demographics in the room, how many of you have 25 or more years? A lot. Okay. How many of you have 30 or more years? And I will narrow it down to my winner here in a second. Who had 35 or more? Wow. Who has 40 or more? Okay, now we'll break it down to 41, 42, 43. I can't count higher than 44, okay? 45. Okay, so 44 is the winner. That's a lot of years. Congratulations. And not just congratulations to the one with the 40s and 40 plus, congratulations to all of you. Even the person who's sitting in this room that may only been with UPS for 5 or 10 years. It starts somewhere, right? The pension started somewhere. You started accumulating things when you first started with UPS, not knowing where you might be 30 or 44 years later. So congratulations on all those milestones. Yes,
if a person in the military and you're deployed, how does that play into effect with your hours of service?
Okay, so there are protections, and for anyone who didn't hear the question related to military service. So if you were part of Desert Storm activity in the early 90s or anything since then, because we've had multiple events, or if it's just regular guard duty where you've been on a 2-week assignment or anything like that, what happens, there are protections under USERRA, which is an act to protect military and veterans and so forth. So when you return to work, you have requirements under the USERRA Act. You have to return to work, and I'll just state a general rule here. Typically a 5-year leave for someone who is enlisting and going into a military service, or if re-enlistment is necessary, in some cases it may extend beyond 5 years. But you return back to work to your employer within a specified period of time, depending on how long you were on military leave. And if you meet all your requirements, the plan then gets notification by the district, effectively through the systems, that you have returned from military leave. We have a report that we will go back and look to see when did it start and when did it end, and we will backfill that time for you. Okay?
With service hours?
With service hours. You will get service for those years. If you've been on military leave and you feel as though you're missing any hours of service for those years, you should send us a note on that and tell us specifically what you're looking for. So I would advise anyone who has military service in their history, just pay attention to it. If you still are serving the military, just make sure you pay attention. And now, one thing to note is you can't call us the day you return and ask to see if we gave you credit, because it's going to take about 2 months before we get all the notifications, okay? What I would advise you to do is at the end of each calendar year, which is not really December 31 in our world. In our world, it's more like February 28th or February 29th, because we have about a 2-month run out with all the year-end activity associated with payroll, W-2 activity, things of that nature. Generally, we are looking at about the first 60 days of the year before we wrap things up. But I would always advise you to go look at your record on the retirement calculator. Part-timers, I'm sorry, you don't have access to the calculator. But you can, on a once-a-year basis, write into the plan and ask for an estimate of your benefit or your profile, basically. Full-timers, you don't have to write it. Matter of fact, don't bother us. You can go online, retirement calculator, and you can see it anytime. You can run as many calculations as you'd like. If anything ever comes up where you don't understand, or it doesn't match up with your profile, the way you think it should, all you have to do is you can either call us. We can't give out all the information over the phone, but we certainly have to respond to anything you send us in writing. You can do a snail mail, or you can do it at retirement@ups.com. The one thing I will ask you to always do, no matter if you're calling or writing, always include and provide us your employee ID. Now that I'm on that topic, for all those money managers, family money managers sitting in the room, you can't make the phone call for the retiree or for the UPSer. The UPSer has to be involved in the call. We have to be protective of individual employee information. So if a spouse calls up, they sometimes get frustrated with us because we're not willing to volunteer information about the employee. We can talk to the spouse about the plan terms all day long. We can describe things about the plan, but we have to be careful about talking about the individual employee. Because unfortunately, sometimes people aren't who they say they are, or they have other motives in mind when they start asking questions. So we have to be protective of the information we provide about you. To the point that we won't even get into employee benefits over the phone. We'll ask you to request those types of things in writing. Okay? Yes, sir.
Back to vesting hours versus service hours. Say an employee starts in July and gets 750 hours for the calendar year. Does that count as a service year also?
That counts as a vesting year. The example, the question for those who didn't hear it, if a person starts in July and they make it to 750 hours, how does that affect service? With the speaker again. You would get credit for the vesting year because you made the 750 hour threshold. But with respect to the service credit formula or schedule, you would only be given for 750. You'd only be about 6 months of service. Now, that counts because the last year you worked when you decided to retire, maybe you only have to accrue 6 months in that year. If you were shooting for a nice round target of 30 or something like that, maybe you only have to work long enough in that calendar year to earn 6 months of service credit. So it's a bookend effect. Whatever was short on the front can also be shortened on the back. Okay? But it might be your 31st anniversary to get to the 30 years of service credit based on one is your anniversary date, one is a calendar year measurement. That's a good question, because 750 gets you the full vesting year, but gets you a partial service credit year.
So then after your 30 years, say you got 32, 33 years in, your last year you have 6 months of credit, are you saying you'll actually get the retirement benefit for that 6-month period?
I can't say yes, specifically you will, but we will factor it in, and whichever type of pension that pays you the most, that 6 months will be in there. So yeah, we certainly include it in our calculation. And with partial service pensions, especially with all the hands I saw for who was part-time and they've been full-time, we're coordinating service pension or partial service pension between the two plans for you. So we would calculate your regular accrued benefit. If you're leaving before age 65, we have to look at the plan's early retirement factors and adjust it for early commencement. So down to 62, if you have 20 or more years, there's no reduction, but starting at 62, we reduce it 6% per year. 42 technical, going way too fast for all this stuff to sink in, right? But that's what the plan is doing. Now, I can tell you all this stuff, and we can talk about all this stuff, and I can fill your head with all the technicalities this morning, you can take notes like a madman, but the retirement calculator is doing all this for you. And there's a worksheet available to you, and yes, this has turned into an advertisement for the retirement calculator. I'm going to market that system, like I've always done in every group meeting I've had. But that will tell you specifically whether or not credit is being given for the 6 months. The other type of credit that we have is service pension credit, and that's the one that confuses people. Because your service pensions aren't based on anything I've told you thus far. The service pensions are not calculated based on anything I have shared with you thus far. Well, with one exception. You have to work. Okay? We don't track hours for your service pension calculation. We track weeks of work. So in a calendar year, and it's called service pension credit. A little confusing, a little too similar, like twins almost. Service credit for the normal retirement benefit, and service pension credit for the service pension benefit. Okay? And this was tracked based on the number of weeks that you work in a calendar year. For the first 20 weeks of the year, sorry, I will correct myself, for the first 19 weeks of the calendar year, you do not receive any service pension credit. If you work 19 weeks, you get 0. But when you hit the 20th week, so I work on Monday next week, that's my 20th week, I get 6 months of service pension credit. That's very important when you close out 2019. If you have 29 years and 6 months of service pension credit, you can't just work in January and expect to get to 30. You're going to have to work through the first 20 weeks of the year. Now, if you skip a week, that's okay. Vacation does count. Discretionary time counts. All that counts. But if you skip a week, you still have 32 other weeks to make up that 1 week. The problem is individuals who do not work at least 40 weeks in a year. That sometimes, unfortunately, happens to an individual. And if there is no military leave reason or something like that associated with that reason for that leave, there are individuals who come up with less than a full year. If you were hired, we'll use the hire example where you work 750, but you didn't make it to the 1801 for the prior 2 slides. Well, if you were hired part of the way through the year and you can only get to 18 weeks, unfortunately, you're not going to get any service pension credit for that year. The same thing is true when you get ready to leave. I've had so many people over the years who will just leave in April because they tried to calculate their weeks and they missed it. They miscalculated. Put a few extra weeks in your pocket just as insurance, okay? Don't just try to leave on that last Monday because that's your 20th week. Be very cautious of that. So all the money managers in the room, tell your spouse, you gotta have 25 weeks, or make some cushion in there to get you there. Make sure you pick the right date. It's important, because it can mean a lot of money to you over your lifetime. Yes, sir?
What if you're part-time and then full-time? End of the year, so you probably have 7 weeks, but not full-time.
We only count the weeks while you're in the full-time capacity. You have to be eligible for the plan. So if you were part-time for the first 20 weeks of the year, those are not going to count in the full-time plan. But the remaining 32 weeks of the year would count if you work on 32. Yes, sir?
A week based on 5 days? 6 days?
A week is, on my calendar, a week is 7 days. Now, you might have a funny calendar up here in Minnesota, right? We'll check. No, it's a bit a little funny there, try to be funny, sorry, humor, sorry for the poor humor. No, it is a Sunday through Saturday pay period. I don't know of anybody who's an exception to that in the UPS world, except for somebody who might be a monthly pay period or something like that. So each calendar week, so if you're looking at a calendar and there's a Saturday date, that's a week. If your pay period end date is 1/2/2023 or something, that, if you work that week, that would be a week.
So you're saying about working at least one day within that?
Yes, yes. So if you work on Monday, or if you work on Friday, that's the only day, you're still getting credit for that week.
How does being off on board comp figure into that?
There is a provision in the plan to cover, because unfortunately, accidents will happen occasionally. If it happens, there's a provision to give you up to 40 weeks of time if your workers' comp is going to extend that long. But you cannot have more than one 40-week assignment or allotment or allowance for a workers' comp. There's also an hours allowance there too, it's 1801. It basically says, if you're in an unfortunate situation where you have a workers' comp, a serious workers' comp injury, if you miss, 6 weeks or whatever, we're going to give you time for that. So it covers you to a point. Now, it's not going to cover you for 3 or 4 or 5 years or anything like that, because there are limits in the plan. Yes?
It's off on disability mention.
Disability is different, it's not work-related, so when you're on disability, there's a smaller allowance, 4 weeks on the disability leave for the service pension credit, and then 190 hours on the hours of work for the service credit.
Are these numbers, because we used to calculate in hours for pension, but now we're calculating in weeks, so retro to 2008, do these numbers you're giving us apply?
Yeah, ever since 1/1/2008, what I'm describing for you has been in place.
How about before that, does it just say?
Before that, it was the contributory structure at Central States, and effectively the same exact, you see the schedule I have here, 0 to 19 is 0 years of service pension credit, 20 to 39, you divide the number of weeks, so if you had 30 weeks, you divide it by 40, that's 75%, right?
Okay.
That's how that would work. That worked that same way in the Central States world too. And then 40 or more, obviously, you have a year of service pension credit. You can never earn more than 1 year of vesting, 1 year of service credit, or 1 year of service pension credit. You can never get more than 1 year of credit in a single calendar year when you start calculating these service answers. Okay, questions?
I was on the calculator recently, and my question is the calculator got everything figured in, like the January 1, 2020, everything's in there already?
It's in there.
So whatever it says is...
I'll tell you what, if you find that what it says you disagree with, send us a note, and I'll send you a prize or something if it's broken. No, it is accurate. What I'm basically saying here is I bet you it's accurate. I can't bet you, can't do that kind of stuff, but if I was able to gamble, I would bet you lunch versus breakfast that we're right, okay? It's been programmed, it's been tested. If you are somehow, some way an exception, or you have an issue such as, if you've been on a leave of absence recently, it will not project into 2020. Now, it will calculate as of 2/1/2020, but it's not going to assume you're working yet. We have to let some time pass before the calculator will kick back into projecting a work behavior, okay? The service pension is not broken down by per year rates. The service pension is just this simple. I'll use the 30-year example. If you have 30 years, at any age, it becomes effective 1/1/2020, $3,800. So the 20 years applies. The 20 years gets you to the 30. So it's part of that requirement, part of that eligibility in the profile we're looking for, because without 20 you can't get the 30, so it's important, right? But it's not specifically setting a value at 20 years and then an additional value for the next 10 years. It's just purely 30 years or not. If you have 29 years and 11 months, so 29.92, that's not 30. We drop it back to the 29-year calculation. That's why it's important to make sure you know which week is best for you to leave. Okay? All the way in the back.
with January 1 falling in the middle of a pay period, will that week count as the last week of this year or the first week of next year?
It'll be the first week of next year. So anytime you have a 2020 date on Saturday, that is counting in 2020. When we move to 2021, if the pay period end date, even though you may work, I don't know what the schedules may be right now in certain areas of the country, but if you work a Sunday through Thursday, then your pay period still ends on Saturday, is my understanding. Payroll has not changed that behavior. It's just you work the first 5 days of the week, including Sunday, while others may work Monday through Friday, while some others may work Tuesday through Saturday. The pay periods end on Saturday, okay? And that's how we track things.
I guess your answer didn't really clarify it for me.
Okay.
I think I was told that the new bump was only applying to the 30 and 35 years of full-time service.
So you're asking about a partial?
Well, I got 20 years and I'm full-time. Does that bump include in that?
Okay, it was a very well-timed question and clarification. Since I failed you, I will try to read that. So I'm going to talk about two things here. First of all, these are the new rates, and I know in the back of the room you can't read that. There's a lot of stuff there, right? So the one that everybody is most concerned about is that big red box right there, the 30 years. That's what that threshold and higher is what has been improved, okay? So 3,800, 3,900, 4,000, all the way up through for 35 years, and 36 years, and 37 years, they're all going to be the amount in the far right-hand corner, or right-hand column, 4,300. So I'm going to now answer your question specifically. 20 plus 7 is not 30, so you're not there yet. Okay? Now, on your part-time pension, it might have picked up a few dollars there, because if you are looking at a partial service pension, as it's called, where you have 20 years here and 7 years here, you might get 7/25 of the part-time plan. The service pension may be, a partial service pension may be your largest amount. And you may be looking at 20/27 of the full-time plan. Okay? Now, I'm going to very quickly, before everyone stops paying attention to me, tell you that you can't just take what's in the part-time plan plus what's in the full-time plan and add it together and have your answer. Because most people were not promoted to full-time on January 1, right? So what if you have 6 months of service in the part-time plan in 2019 and 8 months of service in the full-time plan in 2019? That equals 6 plus 8 is 14 months of service in 1 year, right? Do you think that's allowable? It's not. And that's what this slide illustrates. This is a person who has moved from part-time to full-time. The yellow bars there in the middle, and this is a 2004 example, the individual accrued a year of service credit in the UPS pension plan and a year of service pension credit in the full-time IBT plan. That equals a total sum of service in that year, 1.5. It can't exceed 1. So for purposes of a partial service pension, we're going to subtract out a half a year. So if you had 20 plus 7, that's 27. If we had to do an adjustment for overlap, as we call it, like this, you would really have 26 and a half. Okay? That's how that calculation is running. Yes, before anybody asks, the retirement calculator is taking into account your part-time service and is doing the adjustment for you. Okay, so it is there.
The service pension credit is 30 years. Is that 30 years still significant? Why would that part-time, 25 was full-time, still a magic number?
Let me answer the question with an example. If you were going to get 1/2 of something, do you want 1/2 of 3,000 or 1/2 of 3,800? You want 1/2 of 3,800 because 1/2 of the larger number is a larger benefit in your bank account, right? That's the best way I know to describe and answer that type of question. It does matter, okay? You do want to get to combined, we call it combined service credit. That's actually the 4th type of credit I've talked about today. You do want to make sure that if you are close to a threshold such as 30 years of combined service credit, and the adjustment's gonna take you from 30 down to 29.5, it would be nice if, for your bank account and for your future, if you were able to get that 6 additional months of service pension credit. Because you may wanna work that little while longer just to make sure that the multiplier is 3,800 on the prior slide versus, I think what it was, depending on your age, is 24, could be as low as 2,400. So the top part of that, I know you can't see it on the way to the back, but basically from right about here, at 57 is when it kicks up. If you leave at 56 and you were just shy of that 30-year partial, we will be using 2,400 as the multiplier. If you wait until your next birthday, even without getting the 30 years, that goes up from 2,400 to 2,900. So it's not just service, it's age sometimes. Because when you are less than 30 years in total combined service credit or service pension credit, the chart isn't as, shall we say, generous. Okay, you're looking at that bar right there in the middle as kind of your threshold. That's what most people are shooting for. Some people are like, they want it all. Okay, we'll go for 35. Okay, but most people who are entering into the 57 to 60-year-old range are just looking to make sure they're at 60. That's been my experience in conversations. But anything beyond that is a cherry on top. It's gravy for most people is the way they look at it. A couple hands were going up.
I've got 21 part-time, 20 years next year. Where do I fall?
So what were the numbers again?
21 part-time, 20.
So you're at 41. Is that what I just calculated in my head quickly? Okay. Anything you continue to work in the full-time plan because you haven't maxed out at 35 is just adding to the full-time benefit. The part-time benefit is done. You're gonna.
$400 month is not, I'm not qualified for that.
Oh, well, you are, because you already have, I'm just gonna go with the numbers here and say you already have 40 years of combined service. So in your partial pension, we are already using the, we're already using the 4,300 in your partial pension because you're at 40 years, you would have 20 35ths of the 4,300. You earn another year, you have 21 years full-time, you would have 21 35ths of the 4,300. So you already have the $400 bump, as you call it, built in, but now each year is just a larger fraction. And if you ultimately work till you had 35 years, you're just getting closer and closer to the full 4,300 is what you're doing. Does that answer your question?
So we just play with the calculator and that'll do the calculations for us, right?
So the question was, does the calculator do what I just described, all those words? Does it do that for you without throwing all those words at you? Yes, it does.
Okay, now let's say it doesn't matter for us. Would it be wiser to, like, if you retire on January 1st or 2nd, 1st, and you have acquired vacations, what happens? Would it be better to use your vacations and retire, or just to retire? Would they pay you for your vacations, or how would you do that?
I will not be so bold as to start trying to communicate local agreement type terms. I know generally what terms are, but with respect to discretionary days or personal holidays or optional days, whatever the official term is, with respect to vacation days, that varies in some cases from different parts of the country, different locals. That can vary. So I'm very careful about answering that question. But what I generally will tell everyone is, does it really matter? Like if you have 3 weeks of vacation, does it really matter if you stay on the payroll during 3 weeks versus if you quit on January 2nd and somebody pays you off 3 weeks? I don't know if it matters or not. So that's the way I would ask that question or answer it back in the form of a question. What are you giving up if you stayed on the payroll for 3 weeks and just called it vacation time? I don't know how that works for you, so I won't speak specifically to that. But I do caution individuals that I know one thing that you can't go wrong doing, and that is if you take vacation and remain an employee, you have all the full benefits of being an employee for that vacation, including your health care as an active employee and all those things. Okay?
I just have one note that I'm a very small percent of that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so, right, so, for the audio and video guide, let's just make sure we, delete the last 75 seconds or something. We have a special guest in the audience today who, as I stated earlier, I don't know what's happening to this microphone, but as I stated earlier, you want to pay attention, because we have an example where someone has paid attention and there was something that was a little off kilter in the history, okay? Not perfect. I never claimed that everything is perfect with respect to all this information, so I'm challenging you to challenge us. And I certainly appreciate your candor here, even though it's a little embarrassing for me to stand up here and say you have it wrong. But yes, definitely, if you have something that you're questioning or you don't understand, use the calculator, stay in tune to your benefit, and write us, and we're human too. If we continue to miss something, don't give up. I will very briefly talk about the plans, claims, and appeals procedures, because Trevor is a trustee on the plan, okay? He's part of the team that keeps my team honest. So if we tell you no, we have to tell you why it's no. The pension plan has its own board of trustees as well. But if we ever tell you no to something, all you're doing is making a claim, right? So you're claiming additional service credit, service pension credit. You're telling us that, no, you're supposed to be using the $3,800 multiplier, you're using the $2,900. If you disagree with us, that's okay. Most of the time, we're going to be accurate. Okay, and I say most of the time, like 99% of the time. Okay? But should you ever be in a situation where we tell you no, always know that it doesn't just stop with what my team says or what I say. Because we're responsible to the trustees. And if you want to appeal a decision we make, you are going to write in to the same Atlanta address, or retirementups.com email address, and you're going to say, you know, you sent me a letter that says that you denied my claim, or you denied my additional service, or my benefit that I think I'm entitled to. That automatically opens the door if we receive it, you know, ahead of the next trustee meeting by 30 days. I then take your claim, your appeal, should I say, to the trustees, and they get a chance to second guess us on your behalf. That's how that works. Okay? Now, it doesn't stop there. If the trustees agree with us, that's when you then could bring civil action against the plan should you so desire. That's your claims and appeals procedure in 3 minutes or less. Okay?
Should you get those people that are saying what I'm saying, or should you wait until, you know, until 120 days, that's going to take $1,000?
Okay, so the question is, how do I apply for my benefit? I'll paraphrase it a little bit. Okay? Was that fair enough? Okay. Recently, as in August, we took the calculator to the next step. The calculator was a planning tool for you. It was to keep you informed of what your profile looks like. I encourage you to visit it over and over and over on each week. Not necessarily each week. But certainly at a minimum on an annual basis. And my preference would probably be, as a personal use of it, on a monthly basis. So when we close out a month, the first weekend of every month, we're closing out 2 months ago. So the first weekend of October, we closed out August. It'll tell you what your profile looks like through August. I'm not talking about the calculation itself, I'm just talking about what you have on file with the plan. Okay, so you can look at that on the retirement data page. But to answer the question about the retirement application, some local HR departments, some local HR representatives, you may see them every day, you may see them once a month. I don't know exactly what your experience may be with that. You can talk to them, they can give you a form, or we could email a form from retirementups.com, and you can send us a piece of paper with all the information on it, and we could run calculations and print things off and send you back a packet of information that'll wind up on your front doorstep or something. But you don't have to do any of that. The retirement calculator, the 3 circled areas there in red, and now has a retire online feature. I will go ahead and tell you, if at one point in your career or your life you said I do, and then at some point thereafter you said I don't anymore, and your benefit is split with that person that you don't want to share things with anymore, we can't use retire online. You will have to do the paper process because we have to split it if you have a quadro on file, a qualified domestic relations order, divorce decree, things like that. So barring the simple example of your benefit is split between 2 people, you can use retire online. including for your partial, and for all those hands I saw go up earlier where you have full-time and part-time in your history, you can do both plans at the same time online. I apologize to everyone who's sitting here who's part-time because you don't have access to this tool yet. It may be, I'm not gonna promise you a date or anything, because we're not there yet, but you may have access to it in the future, okay? But right now, the part-timers still have to do the paper application process. You can simply send us a request to retirementeps.com. We will send you back the form to fill out so we can make sure we gather all the information that we need to complete the packet to send it to your home address. Yes, sir.
What happens to our pension if we would die before we retired?
Okay, so the question is, what happens to my money, my pension, my benefit if I pass away before I retire? If you're married, it defaults to as if you had retired, chosen the qualified joint survivor benefit, which is basically 50% of an adjusted amount to your spouse for the rest of her life or his life, whichever the case may be for the person asking. If you are unmarried, then there's no benefit payable. There are some death benefits. There's a smaller things that may be payable to a beneficiary or survivor or estate. But there's not a monthly annuity that continues to be paid to anyone if you haven't yet retired.
As a follow-up, how would they get that benefit?
If you, there's two scenarios there. The employee passes away, because that unfortunately happens sometimes where we have a teammate will pass away. Usually the HR department is involved in contacting our office, and we're providing either A, the information back to them to take to the family, the survivors, or in some cases they will just mail something directly to the survivor. Okay? They can also contact us at our 800 number. The survivor can contact us. The survivor could be, a child. It could be a caretaker. It could be anyone who has information about the death, because we're going to interview the person, try to collect certain information. One of the first questions we're going to ask is, who is the spouse? Where is the spouse? Is there a spouse? We're going to ask those types of questions. Second question we're going to ask, probably the second, third question we're going to ask is, so who is taking care of the estate matters? Because we need to talk to that person. Because that person will be appointed, generally, depending on state law, will generally be appointed in a court or in a court document. And that automatically gives us permission to then start releasing information to that person. Because remember, we have to protect the privacy of not only the living participant, but the deceased participant. Because, as we all probably know, there are lots of people out there who look for death records and obituaries to try to step in and take them. So we have to try to be, we have to have a fence up to take cautions against that.
What happens if the patient retires, dies 3 months after?
It really depends on the optional form of payment he elects. You'll have a couple different optional forms of payment to elect at retirement. That's why earlier in the presentation I talked about making an informed decision. Knowing what your health condition is. Don't go to the doctor 6 months after you retire and find out that you only have 6 months left to live. Because it can change the decision that you would have made 6 months earlier when you retired. Or don't go choose a spousal option necessarily that the spouse gives bad news to the doctor. And be careful with this decision. Make sure you understand what you're basing your decision on is, and make sure you understand that that's a sound basis for that decision.
If you retire, collect the pension, and then pass away, is it still 50% to your spouse after?
It depends on the optional form elected. There is a 75% option. Now, while the UPSer is living, the benefit will be a little less than if they chose a no survivor option. So if they chose a single life, you get $1,000. If they choose a 75, they might get $800 or $700, depending on the age difference. So the plan will calculate that. The calculator will calculate that if you put your spousal information in, which I haven't pointed it out yet. And I know I have a couple other hands floating around up there, but I'll go ahead and move to the next slide here. You can go ahead and store your spouse's information on the site. So every calculation you run, you get the 50% option and the 75% option showing up for your retirement plan. So I would encourage you to go ahead and do that. If you have one of those I do, I don't situations, and you have the former spouse already on file with the plan, you would just need to let the plan know and we can remove that. Subject to whether or not you have an order against your benefit. We may leave that spousal information out there, but we would classify the person as a former spouse. You can actually classify the person as a former spouse, but I don't suggest you change that classification in front of your current spouse. That would be a problem. So you can put that out there, and then your calculation, your financial planning exercise is a lot more effective when you start thinking, do I buy life insurance? Or do I pick a JNS 75 option? What do I do? Get your financial planner involved, get your tax advisor involved. Whoever your personal advisor is, always make sure they're involved. The calculator breaks it out for you at 65, because you are probably a Central States participant, a grandfather Central States participant. And as I mentioned earlier, and I won't get into the presentation, but Central States does pick up their part of the benefit at age 65. Now, I'll go ahead and ask this because this causes confusion sometimes. I was doing that, but Central States has their own set of calculations, their own factors. It's a separate plan from the UPS IBT plan. So if you're collecting $1,000 as a joint survivor, 50% or 75%, you're collecting $1,000. When you get to 65, if you are then collecting $400 from us, that doesn't automatically mean you get $600 from Central States. It's subject to their calculation provisions as well. So instead of $400 plus $600, it might be $400 plus $598 or $595. So you're $5 shy of what you were. I can't calculate, the retirement calculator cannot represent Central States. We can represent what we know, and we know their accrued benefit is X, okay? The accrued benefit they provide to us is a single life benefit. We can only subtract money at the single life level. So if the single life amount was $1,500, it definitely would be $750 and $750 if we split it 50-50 at your age 65. But when Central States takes their $750 and they move it down to a 75% option, they may use a little different factor than we use, okay? Because our plan terms are not necessarily identical with respect to the optional forms and the assumptions used for actuarially adjusting monies. Is that confusing? Yeah. Yeah, so like I said in my example, if you were collecting $1,000 and you had the JNS 75 option, and then you're collecting $400 from us at 65, they may not pay you $600, they may pay you $595. It's going to be close, but it may not be to the penny. And a lot of people are looking to the penny. Wait a minute, you cut my benefit $3.75. We didn't cut it. It's the Central States calculation. Now, pointing the finger at Central States, standing here in front of a Central States person, but that is effectively the reality of the situation. The two plans do not have identical terms with respect to actuarial adjustments for different optional forms of payment. Okay? And because of that, you sometimes get that confusing reality when you hit 65 that, wait a minute, I'm not getting $1,000 anymore, now I'm getting, where did my other $5 go? That's usually where that answer is. And it's usually with Central States is where the person's going to find that answer. Yes, sir.
So with the pension then, does it have to be started for the spouse to receive anything?
I'm sorry, I'm handing off the mic, I didn't hear the first part.
If a person was to pass away and for the spouse to get any pension, does the pension have to be started before?
Before what?
Before you say you would have passed away. Does the pension have to be started?
No, so if I understood, I'll just repeat just to make sure I understand it. The UPSer passes away, still working, or maybe quit, because I said there were two scenarios, I didn't ever give you the second one, I don't think, but maybe the person leaves UPS, they're a deferred, what we call a deferred person, they're going to wait a while to take their benefit, but not beyond age 65. If that person passes away before they started collecting benefits, made any elections, it's going to default down to, for the spouse, it'll default down to the survivor amount of that qualified joint survivor annuity, they're at 50% amount. Okay. Not the 75. No. The default, if it's a pre-retirement election, the default is the 50% goes to the spouse. If you want to retire with a 75, you would have had to retire and pick the 75. Yeah, so good clarification.
As a part-timer, a transfer from out west up here, does that show up on that calculator?
Not likely, and the reason I say that is because I'm a part-timer and you're out west, I'm going to go way out west. and you were covered by Western Conference. Yeah. So we don't have Western Conference information. Western Conference is administered by the Western Conference plan. So we do not have that information for you. Now, in certain cases, and this would be one of those where the retirement calculator isn't going to show you an accurate picture, you're going to have Western Conference time that probably will play into the partial service pension. If we don't have that on file for you because you haven't provided it to us yet, but you didn't know you needed to, if you were in some other conference or some other plan, you can go ahead and provide that service. Get a profile report from that other plan, send it in, and we can put it on file for you, and then your partial calculation will reflect it. But that has to be manually provided to us by you. We can't go get it from the other plan. I know effectively where everyone has been in their pension profile, what plans they've been in over their career, based on your job history. But I don't know what your service is with Western Conference, Central PA Teamsters, Upstate New York Teamsters, any of those other like 30, 40 other plans. I don't know what your service is. I can see that you were covered by them, but I don't know what your service is. If you provide it to us, you'll get a better result. I have a friend named Google, and if you were in another plan, Google has informed me that you can always type it in on your computer, and you can find the contact information, the address or the phone number for the other plan that covered you, and just write them. I know people are skeptical about providing their social to anybody, anywhere. Some plans may be able to work off the last four. I can't speak for the other plans, but they probably are going to require that you identify yourself with your social, your date of birth, most likely. Okay. But go to Google or Bing or whatever your chosen DuckDuckGo, whatever your chosen search engine is, and search for the plan that covers you. Or if you had a local number out there, you can go to that local's website. I think 99% of them have a website. You can go there and you can find things about pensions and benefits and so forth that, even though it's in the past, could help get you to the source. And then give it to us. We can put it on file. Your retirement calculator experience will be different.
So there's like 5 of us in the room from supply chain. Can we use this, or do we fall into like the hard curtain? Is a calculator good for UPS supply chain?
When you say supply chain, are you talking about cartage?
Yeah, cards are.
Okay, all right. Yes, you can, because you're covered by the IBT plan. Yeah, I have to be careful with cartage because some are in multi-employer plans, some in the IBT plan, depending on what part of the country they're in. But yes, you should use the same thing. Okay.
So it's individual, trust those numbers
Yes.
that we have a separate.
Yeah. To go back to my embarrassing example that was brought up earlier, the individual that was saying, yes, it happened to me. Not only was the calculator telling the answer, but my team gave the same answer, because guess what? They use the exact same system that you're accessing. So it absolutely can happen. We have evidence of it, where the team that I have, about 40 people or so in Atlanta that are helping do all this across the country for these large groups, these plans, they are using the same system. So yes, it is accurate. Just like if I mailed you a packet and put it on your front doorstep, you would trust it, right? Unless there's something obviously wrong. I've been in 35 years, and unless I have 25, any questions asked, an obvious error somewhere. It has to be. Maybe, maybe not. We just have to look at it. But the system that was used to put the packet on your front doorstep is the same one you'd be using here if you retire online or retirement calculator. It's the same exact system. What happens if Central States becomes insolvent? I'm retiring. If Central States becomes insolvent, we go into the conversation here. Okay, everybody's received their happy grant, right? And unfortunately, the facts are that you've been told that there could be some financial difficulties in the future. I can't speak, I don't think anyone in this room can, maybe somebody knows more than I do, but I can't speak to what may be the remedies with respect to legislation, because it's being evaluated. It's not just a single state problem, it's a pension concern across a broader number of plans. So there is legislation, a couple different versions over the past couple of years here, where they're trying to come up with solutions. So what I will answer you with is what you're looking for me to say, but not quite in the words you're looking to hear. Okay? There are provisions in the UPS IBT plan, if you are a grandfathered Central States participant, so if you retired 20 years ago, this does not apply to you, But if you're a grandfathered Central States participant and you have part of your benefit calculated by the Central States portion through 07, and then part of a UPS IDT plan continuing thereafter, or you're part of that transfer group as we call it, you have a protection built into the plan document, okay? Now, I'm very quick to tell somebody, I didn't just tell you that if Central States cuts your benefit by $20, that the UPS IBT plan is going to pay you $20. That's not what I said. Now you're really listening to me. The ones that were asleep woke up, okay? You have to keep in mind that with legislation, with the PBGC, with anything else that may be introduced into that question that you just asked me, that becomes part of the solution. So for example, if Central States cuts the benefit $20, your age 65 benefit by $20, well, if you're not to 65 yet, it won't affect you. It's when you're 65 and over, so keep that in mind. But if there are protections through legislation, if there are protections through PBGC coverage or anything like that, and let's just say that equals $10. So you were cut 20 and $10 flowed in from somewhere else for whatever reason it may have come in from another source. What do you think the UPS IBT plan is effectively looking at closing out or giving you? $10. You were cut 20, $10 came from some other source, or $7 came from another. I'll make the number a little different. You were cut 20, $7 comes from another source. Well, we're not going to give you from the IBT plan 20, so you make out by $7. Yeah, it's basically a gap filler. Now, remember what I said earlier about optional forms of payment? And Central States has a few different factors maybe than we do in some of those 50s and 75s. If your benefit was adjusted, it is very possible that, if they cut it 20 on that JNS 75, you end up with 1975 as your backfill. Okay? All those are moving parts that no one has really thought about when they ask that question, and rightfully so. I mean, it's a very technical type question. But what I want to make sure you understand is that you do have protection in the CBA when it was when we withdrew, all those arrangements were put in place. You also have it in the plan's terms. It's already in the plan's terms. Okay? But I will tell you there's a limitation to what the plan is going to cover. So if you chose a 75 and Central State sends you a letter says we're cutting your benefit $50, it has to be adjusted down to a 75. Okay, we wouldn't just give you $50 and you walk away with an extra 10 or 20 or $30. That's why I said I'm retiring if that happens, because it's going to be a little bit of a chaotic situation. Oh, by the way, I don't even have to deal with the chaos. I'm in the seat to have to deal with some of it, and Trevor, his phone ring off the hook and everything else. But what would happen is the person who is waiting for that money is going to be very impatient. They're waiting for that backfill, that gap filler, if you want to call it that. So we would get to it, but it would be quite an exercise. Okay, so there is protection there. That's the answer I'm telling you. It's the answer you want to hear, but I'm not going to tell you that if they cut it 20, you get 20 from us. It's a little more complicated than that. Okay?
In a divorce situation, the ex-spouse is granted via the divorce decree, and does it matter if after the time of divorce if they're vested or not vested?
Well, I'm not going to start coaching on what to say and not to say when you're going through a divorce, but it really is, what did you do when you went through your negotiations? Divorce situations are unique to that couple. There's kind of a bucket I can throw them all into, but I'm not going to give you, my team's not going to give you information about your spouse's benefit, your former spouse's benefit. It'll be very limited in what we would discuss because you're two separate individuals now. You're not a couple. And besides that, I've already told you the financial planners in here, the managers for the household, we're not really going to talk to you about the specifics. They talk to you about the plan. So we carry that through in your question about, when did you find out? You guys, as you go through the exercise, if you were in that situation, you go through the exercise, you need to make sure you understand the moving parts as you're going through the exercise. That's why you hire attorneys, and they charge you $300 to $400 an hour. If they're not doing the job, fire them and hire another attorney. They can do the job. They're paid to make sure you understand what you're signing, right? That's my advice, if you will. It's not really advice, it's kind of instruction or suggestion around divorce action. Because you don't want to wake up one day, 15 or 20 years from now, go right to the UPS retirement plan or the IBT plan and say, I'm looking for my benefit as the former spouse of Joe. Joe retires in when Joe retires, we automatically start the spouse, former spouse, we try to contact that individual and get them to start as well. We calculate the benefit then. 15 years later is a little late to figure out that you didn't get what you thought you were getting. So make sure you understand, if you go through a divorce, you need to understand what the terms are, what that means to you. It cannot, and we cannot answer questions about, well, will it be $3,800 in the future? Will it be $4,300? We don't know. So when you write a divorce agreement, are you looking at here and now? Are you looking at 20 years in the future? What are you looking at? You have to think about those things.
So as an employee, you can't find out what your retirement benefits were.
You cannot, from the calculator, find out what the net benefit is. We can tell you what your gross is. So if you go run a calculation, you have 30 years and it says you $3,800, but you have a divorce from 10 years ago that says the former spouse gets $500, it won't be in the calculator. You would have to remember, you agreed to give $500 away in the future. And so you would do simple math, 3,800 minus 500, I get $3,300. But we're not going to tell you, and we're not going to continue to rerun and reinterpret your order. We will send you the order and you can interpret it, but we're not going to continue to recalculate the benefit with each passing year or whatever the case may be, or each passing month. If a person's just trying to figure out, what am I supposed to be getting here? You're given all that information during the divorce proceedings. If your divorce order says that it's based on a lifetime fraction or a career fraction, then sure, each passing $3,800 improvement or whatever could be part of that equation. If you're going to ask specifics about your divorce information, I have 3 people on my team that specialize in the Quadro area, and they would be the ones that would handle your request. That would have to be in writing. They're not going to be able to quote you anything on your phone, but you can put things in writing to ask questions about it if you don't understand it. But by all means, if you have that situation, find that divorce decree, find that order associated with the pension plan benefit, and make sure you understand it, and make sure you know where it is first, and then make sure you understand it. Because most people don't even, they call us and say, can you send me a copy of it? That's not our role. We're not your record keeper. Okay, not to back away from it, you should have a copy of it, but we're not the record keeper. Okay, your attorney and you are your record keepers for that situation. Okay.
How will we get the contact information for one of those 3?
For one of what 3? That's individuals. It's the same 800 number, the same retirement@ups.com, and then the 800 number we'll talk about, I'll give it to you at the end here. But that you would use the same contact information, and then it gets routed to the proper individual. For the service pensions, I did not. The part-time service pension, by the way, good question to clarify. That schedule, that all those numbers, that table that was up there, that is the full-time benefit. I do not have in this presentation the part-time benefit. But the National Master Agreement has it stated in there very clearly, if you see that. And I know that a lot of the local, even the website, when the negotiations were happening, the website clearly defined what those are. If you're trying to get an SPD for the improved benefit, the UPS IPT plan, SPD, as well as the part-time plan SPD, is like that close to being published, so that's getting ready to show up in your mailbox. Okay, and you'll get it in there. $26 divided by 33 times, whatever the 33-year number was in the chart is how that would work. Calculator will do that for you. Okay, so it would take, if you wanted to go straight 26 years in the chart, sitting with the memory here, that would have been a $2,400 number, and it would be down $100 each, so probably $2,200 or so, $2,300. You could go a straight 26-year service pension. Okay, we'll say it's 2,300, I don't remember this number, but we would then calculate the partial to see if 26 33rds is larger than the 26-year pension. We'd also look at the age you're leaving, take your normal benefit, the 170 and 175 and all that, add all that up, adjust it for early retirement if you need to, and then compare all those answers and give you the highest of 3. That's what happens every time. Calculator is that specific, it's doing it every time. Because my team is not sitting there calculating pencils, it's the retirement calculator. Okay? Just hold the questions for 1 second. This slide here from the retirement calculator is that retirement data slide I talked about earlier. The normal retirement dates, the early retirement dates, all those things are defined terms, so if you don't know what it means, you can click on it, it'll tell you, pop up, will tell you what it is. So it's your vesting service, your service credit, your service pension credit. Also, your year-to-date hours. We don't have year-to-date weeks. There are year-to-date hours there. So it also tells you what the central states tell us about you. As of 12/31/07, central states told us this person had 14.925 years of service or contributory service. Okay? So that's the retirement data page that was referenced earlier. The calculation page, for if you haven't used the calculator, it's real simple. You go to the calculator page, you can run multiple scenarios all at one time, three scenarios at once, or you can run a single scenario. You just fill in the blanks. And then you submit the calculation request, and you get an answer back. If your spouse's information is not on file, it'll look something like this. Down at the bottom, this is the central states portion that we were mentioning earlier. What I'm trying to do is bring the presentation up to speed with all the questions, because you guys have asked the questions that flow right along with this. So we're talking about what's the central states benefit expected to be at 65. Okay? Oh, by the way, backing up one, this little red circle down here is not on your computer screen, but most people miss it. I need to put it on the computer screen, because this doesn't show you the formulas. This doesn't show you the partial or the service or the accrued benefit. But if you click on the calculation details when you run a single calculation, you can go in and look at pages that cover the calculation that applies to you. Okay? So that's a separate pop-up. If you have pop-up blockers, sometimes that gets in the way of people, but it's a PDF. So if you're using the site and you click on that and it says it's blocking it, take that blocker off or do your shortcut to get that document to pop up, and it'll show you the details of your calculation. You do not have to write to Atlanta to get the details of your calculation. It's available at your fingertips. Okay? And then we get to Retire Online. There's an introductory page. There's a video on it. There's a video on upsers.com. I'm not going to play the video this morning. There are instructions. Read through those 2 pages very carefully. Make sure you're prepared. So when you start your Retire Online exercise, all you have to do is answer questions. Just fill in the blanks. When do I want to leave? I'm going to leave on January the 27th. Am I married? And if you've already given us your spousal information, your personal information, I'll block it out here, but it would be filled in here. And we would have the information for the spouse and everything on file. If you get to this point, you put, yes, I'm married, but you forgot to give us the spouse information, it'll just scream at you and say you can't go any further, go finish that first. If you were married and you forgot that you put the spouse on file 5 years ago and now you're trying to retire a single, it'll scream at you and say, you told us you're single, but you have a spouse on file. Good clean that up is what it'll tell you to do, okay? And you never had to talk to us or ask anybody, or we didn't have to call you and verify if you sent us a piece of paper. You continue to work through there. If you're designating someone, you can't in these plans designate, but you can in part-time plan designate someone other than a spouse for a joint annuitant. It would be listed here. Okay? You can hit the drop down and choose that person for either plan. This person has 2 plans. They have the full-time plan and the part-time plan. So if it's in your history, it's going to show up. Both plans use the same last day of employment. Both plans use the same date for the commencement calculation. I want to start on February 1. If you choose not to start one of the plan benefits, you have that option later to make that election. Okay? And this is when do I want the benefit to start? In this case, they chose August. We would choose February in our example for January 2020. Moving right along through here, you get to the optional forms to make sure, you should have already seen this because you'll run calculations ahead of time to prepare for what optional form do I want? Am I supposed to live another 35 years? You know, all those kind of things that you start thinking about before you make decisions about lifetime decisions, right? Lifetime elections. So make sure you understand that. And you'll miss it. I do. And some of the testing and so forth, you're going through it, I miss it. There'll be little boxes that say, yes, I acknowledge, yes, I agree, yes, I affirm. We want to make sure you've taken the time to read everything on that page. This is not a quick decision, click, click, get out of here, be done. It's not a race, okay? I mean, you feel like it's a race, you can run a long marathon, don't trip right before the finish line. You're getting ready to retire, don't trip, okay? Read everything, make sure you acknowledge, you understand. If not, there's coaching content on the left on every screen. There's additional information in the description on every screen. I know it's boring, it's not flashy, it's not doing it for you, it's not talking to you, but it's important. It's no different than reading a piece of paper that doesn't talk to you either if we mail it to your house. It's the same thing. It's just this is a lot faster for you and for us from a processing standpoint. We're able to more quickly respond to you if we find something in your history or in the calculation log. Because we're going to review these. When you hit submit later in here, it comes to my team and they review it the next day. When you mail something, you're in line with every other piece of paper that came into the office. A good little marketing pitch, usually. So make sure you acknowledge things, keep it moving. You'll have required notices. You can choose to read all of them, understand them, print them off, save them, frame them, whatever you want to do. Just make sure that you want to make sure you look at it, you understand it. It's in the paper packets we send out. It's also here. What you do with it, whether I mail it to you and you choose not to read it, throw it in the trash, or whether you look at this and acknowledge it and keep it moving but you don't understand it, that's on you. That's your responsibility to make sure you take the time to read through everything. Okay? Good luck in election now. And then you'll continue on. You won't make your optional form election until you've read all those documents ahead of time. You've been given all the information that we are required to tell you before you get here to say, I want a single life, I want a 75%, or I want to wait, I just want to defer, I don't want the part-time benefit at this time. You can do all that here. You're making elections, because it has the radio buttons over here. And they're very small screens even up front, so in the back, I can't imagine how small it is. You continue on with the direct deposit acknowledgement, because it is direct deposit of your benefits. You then give us your banking information. You then make your tax elections for each plan, state and federal. And then you get to the final page, step 6. This is when you get kind of nervous, your palms are sweating, you don't know whether you want to click on submit or not. It's okay to hit submit if you're comfortable. If you're not, don't do it. At any point prior to this, with all the screens, if you got interrupted, the dog is barking and needs to go out, or whatever happens, or somebody knocks at the front door, or whatever happens, nothing is saved until you do one thing, and that's that lower right-hand corner. You have to hit submit. Once you hit submit, it comes to us. We start our job. If you never send in anything, you never finish the process, you're not retired. Because there's more to do than just click submit. But if you click submit, and then the next day, you find out something that changes your decision, some life-altering situation. Many times it's been bad news. Somebody loses a family member, something like that is a life-changing type event. And unfortunately, that's doom and gloom, but it happens. And so if that person doesn't want to retire, you're not obligated. Okay? All you have to do is back out. You can't back out online. You have to send us. You have to contact us. So you send us an email, retirement@ups.com. You can call us, and then we'll tell you. We want you to put it in writing. We'll find out what's going on, and we'll tell you what you need to do. Okay? Somebody asked a question earlier about when do I start this? I think it was related to the question up front here. When do I start this kind of stuff? 60 to 90 days before your last day. So if your last day is January 31st, and you want your first check on 2/1, you want to go back 60 to 90 days prior to 2/1 as your first check. Go 60 to 90 days prior to 2/1 and start the process. If you try to go in there today and put in March of next year, it's going to say, can't do it. You can't project 6 months out for your retirement activity. You can do projections in the calculator and figure out what the number's going to be in March of next year, but it won't let you retire. It won't let you submit it. Okay? So once you've read everything, accepted disclaimers, acknowledged everything, you then get the Post-it notes. The Post-it notes are telling you what to do. They're not icons for you to click on. You print, you sign, and you send. Just like the video would show you too. Watch the video, I would encourage you to do that. But what you're sending is a confirmation statement at a minimum. So you'll have a confirmation statement for both plans that recaps everything that you've told us online. You have to sign that and send it to us. You can send it email. You do not have to mail it. But we also want proof of who you are, and proof of age, and fraud prevention, and all that kind of stuff. Want a copy of your driver's license, a copy of your spouse's driver's license, and a copy of your marriage certificate. If you chose a single life benefit, and the spouse said, yes, you may, does the spouse get to say that? Yes or no, you can choose a single life. Otherwise, you have to choose at least a 50% for that spouse. Okay? At the spouse doesn't give permission, you have to choose the JS 50 or 75. You can't choose a single, so be nice to your spouse. Okay? But if you're required to have a spousal waiver, it will show up in your list here. Anything that you're required to have will show up in your list. Once you've sent it, and we've reviewed it and accepted it, it'll move from the top to approved documents. So you can get a status. You can go online and check the status of what we've done, what we've approved. If we haven't, we're already sending you an email back or contacting you to let you know we haven't approved it for it wasn't a good picture. Picture quality images is what you need to keep in mind for submitting things to us. Because you can send it to us electronically, but it has to be picture quality so that we can reproduce it. Otherwise, you're going to have to send in the original form. That usually comes into play more with the stamps from a notary for that spousal consent form if somebody's going that route. Okay? They have to be able to read it. And then when you go back to the retirement calculator homepage, you can still get in, but you don't have the same features on the homepage. This is exactly where we started, except once you submitted something, it looks different, but you still have access to see what the status is, and you can reprint your confirmation statement if you need to. Okay? So that's available, again, to full-timers, not to part-timers, but if you're a full-timer with part-time history, you will be retiring along with your part-time plan, which tells the part-timers in here that we have the ability to do this. It's just a matter of finalizing a few things before we get there. So I'm going to move to this slide because it was becoming the Q&A session. I just want to make sure I got through that piece because I'm starting to infringe on some others' time here. But we'll continue as long as Trevor and others are agreeable here with the Q&A session. So. No, nothing to save, nothing to save. You start over. So it's all or nothing. There is no confusion. When you go back in later, or you timed out, because after 20 minutes of time out, if you're not doing anything, there's no confusion. What did I do? What did I not do? No confusion whatsoever, because you're back on screen one. No, this is specific to the pension plans only.
So if you retire and you get your pension, is there a limit of money you can make before it messes up your pension?
Oh, like the Social Security has a limit on what your Social Security benefit would be if you had income? No, these plans are independent of that. Now, I'm not going to speak for Central States, but there are prohibited employment type situations that Central States might want to talk to you about, but from the IBT plan, no. There's no limit, the pension plan, there's no limit on earnings you can make elsewhere.
Can you file for your retirement in paper application?
You can ask us to send you that form, and we'll send you 17 pages or 15 pages or whatever. Maybe only 10 of them apply to you, or 5 of them apply to you. So yeah, you can do that. The part-timers are still doing that. But I'll challenge you. Why would you need paper if it's on your screen? And if there's not a really, and you don't have to answer me rhetorical or anything else, but I'll challenge anybody who says, I want the paper instead of doing that. I need to understand why, because I need to overcome that hurdle. Whatever that is, not necessarily for you, I may never change your mind, but there are 200,000 people that can use retirement money. And if I'm only getting 20 to use it, that was a waste of money. It's not just this plan, I have other plans too that I'm responsible for that use it. So I would definitely enjoy the conversation, not to challenge you as much as just to understand what is the mindset that keeps you from using this as opposed to you want us to put a packet on your front door. Stuff. Door stuff. Just to have an option. And sometimes, my computer's broke. Okay, that's the reason. Well, I'm in the middle of moving. That's going to be a problem with the paper because we can't find you either. There's all kinds of things I've heard thus far. But again, getting into kind of the debate mode, I can also tell you that the retirement line actually addresses that for you in those cases. When you can't do it, when you can't go online, people start complaining, well, why can't I do it? And then the ones that can, I get, well, what if I'm on paper? That kind of thing. So sometimes it's just like, I think people are just being the opposite of whatever's available to them. What you can't do, you want to do. And what you have access to, sometimes it's like, just stick with the old way. I'm comfortable with the old way. That's part of my paradigm right now issue is I'm trying to get out, trying to get people to think less about paper transactions and more about, it's done. You sit down in 15 or 20 minutes, you're done. You're not waiting and say, well, when are they ever going to give me that piece of paper I sent them 2 weeks ago? I haven't got it yet.
So if you do it online, you have the option to print the screens?
Absolutely.
That you put your information on?
As long as you print, when you're going through it, you can't go back to the screen and print it, but that summary document, that confirmation statement has everything that you did. So it's printing out each of the screens that you went through and typed information. That's what you're signing and sending to us, because I want to know that you did look at it and you acknowledge that this is what I did. Now, some have accused me of, well, why do you need that piece of paper if you're so confident with the Power Online? If you made me acknowledge everything, why do you need a piece of paper? Well, that's a good question. I'm just going to go with, I'm stuck in an old paradigm. I want to see your signature, because I can't get a signature online. There's not an electronic signature. And you're signing something that says, this is me. And you're giving me your driver's license, so I know it wasn't somebody else who just blindly and blatantly went in and put some information in and pretended they were you. They could still print the confirmation statement off and sign it and say, hey, I wouldn't know your signature from the next person, but I have your ID with it. I have your spouse's ID with it. I have a marriage certificate with it. Those things start becoming a little more difficult and a little more of a deterrent for someone trying to pretend they're you in some, digital world or something. Okay?
So, earlier you said for every year before your age 65, you take like 60% reduction.
Yes.
So if you retire before you're 65 and don't take your pension until you're 65?
You get the full amount. And it's not every scenario where there's 6%, because we do all the calculations to see which one pays the most money at age 61 or 60 or whatever your age will be. And then you make that choice from the largest dollar amount, what you want to do. And one of those required notices tell you that if you wait, your benefit will be, this amount at 65, whereas you're asking for this right now. How do you get what? UPSers.com. Go to UPSers.com. Upper right-hand corner is a search box. Just search for retirement calculator. That should work. All the time, but once in a while I get somebody says, it's not working for me. Sometimes there's cookies and temporary files and you clear it out of your computer. But make sure you do a search. I'm not going to talk to you how to get there through breadcrumbs and all the click and click. You just go to the search box, type retirement calculator, and there'll be a couple options come up. Click on it, and in that story that pops up, there'll be a retirement calculator link, and a single sign-on will take you into the calculator. If you get a message that says you're not on file, you need to send us an email that says, no problem getting into the calculator, just send it to retirementups.com and we'll reset your account. Or let you know if there's something else going on, we'll let you know what that is.
So you retire and you don't pick a survivor benefit plan. You pass away a year later. Does your spouse get any benefit?
If I heard correctly, you retire, you choose the single life benefit, and the spouse passes away a year later.
No.
That's what you asked?
The retiree passes away.
The retiree.
I'm sorry?
The retiree passes away a year later, let's say.
The retiree passes away a year later, and so you're asking what would the spouse get?
Correct.
Well, there is this feature of that single life benefit. It's called the limited surviving spouse option. If that happens, and the person, and there's three eligibility criteria for that. I'll use the most basic of the criteria. You have at least 20 years of service pension credit. The spouse will be guaranteed 5 years of payments. Okay? Now, I said the spouse. Technically, if you quoted me on that, you could accuse me of stating incorrectly. Because more correctly stated, the spouse receives the balance of the 5 years. So if you receive 3, I think you said a year was the example, right? So if you receive 12 payments and then passed away, there are 38 payments left. I'm sorry, 5 years is 60. So there will be 48 payments left. Now, I can tell you right now that what you're looking for is employment activity in January. Now, if you want to walk away from this meeting with me saying that he did or he didn't say that you had to show up for work, what is your plan? That's what I'm going to turn around and ask you. Are you planning to work in January? If you're planning to work, go ahead and work. If you're planning to take vacation in January, plan that vacation. Talk to your, there's an operation to run. Don't forget, it's a great time in life for you because you're getting ready to enter a new phase, but everybody's behind you. Somebody's got to cover your work. UPS is still operating the next day when you're a retiree or when you're not showing up for work. So as a fellow UPSer, talking to fellow UPSers and teammates on this whole team we have, plan your activity. So if you're going to take vacation, take vacation. If you're going to show up for work, show up for work. If you're going to try to roll the dice and well, somebody told me this and somebody else said that, Okay, play that game if you want to, but I would do this. Make sure that if you have vacation time, go ahead and have vacation time. You're gonna get paid for January 1, but then again, there are these rules that I've heard in local agreements where if you don't show up for work on January 2nd, you might get paid for January 1st. Well, if you're not paid, then are you gonna get the 2020 improvement or not? See, there's all these things to introduce, so I'm gonna go over here with Trevor, and I'm gonna agree with him. Just work. Just work. Yeah, and again, all the different things, yeah. Yeah, if you get a paycheck the first week of January and you're still employed the first week of January, the plan is going to treat it as you're eligible. That's what we're going to do. I don't know if you walked in and drove that package card. I don't know that stuff myself. So you do need to plan your activity, but bottom line is, if your last day is December 30th and you wait till February the 1st to collect your payment, you're not getting the improvement. You better be employed, working, whatever definition you want to use, on vacation. You have to have that last day be in January. Okay?
So 60 to 90 days ahead of time, we fill out your paperwork to say you retire February 1st, and then just plan your activity and vacation. And that's, you've already told them you're retiring, but they have to know whether you take vacation.
You have to continue that question, that discussion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just how, I mean, you're just saying, fill out the paperwork, put them on notice that you're retiring, whether you work or take vacation, it doesn't matter.
As long as, yeah, you have to continue. What we're going to be looking for is payroll activity. So to be as honest, I have full disclosure here, we're going to be looking for payroll activity. Are you still employed? Are you still collecting paychecks? Are you still, because keep in mind that if you don't show up and you don't get any pay, it's supposed to keep someone from thinking, oh, well, they left last week, and start doing the dreaded no-call, no-show stuff that I remember from the days when I was in operations. I mean, we still have no-call, no-show situations even today. But if for some reason there's no evidence that you were employed after January 1 and you weren't paid for January 1, now what? So don't put yourself between a rock and a hard place. I like Trevor's answer. Just work or vacation or whatever. Make sure you're still doing that stuff. Okay? If you were so averse to working on January 2nd or 3rd that it's going to kill you, go ahead and work something out. Make sure that you cover yourself. Don't put yourself between a rock and a hard place that is all of a sudden a $1,400 less per month. Because if you miss it, it can be as much as $1,400 less per month. That would be silly to be arguing over $1,400 a month the rest of your life because I think I have to do something. Well, I always pick the extremes from my examples. Yes, it's 30 years. But you caught me. You're asking about the Central States worst case scenario. The plan terms are the plan terms. Yeah, the contract, anything that is already in the plan invested is not going to be taken away. Okay? If there was some, I don't want to kind of get up into this, but the plan terms are not subject to every CBA being taken away. That's not what the collective bargaining negotiation activity is about. And quite honestly, I would challenge anybody who is concerned about that to give me an example of when has the collective bargaining process taken the pension stuff away. Because I've never seen that. So I know it's a reasonable question because you're thinking, well, if you told me it was negotiated in, then it can't be negotiated out because other side of the coin. But no, the plan, once the plan has some term in it, that's a vested benefit. And if we ever got into changing anything about a past benefit feature, whatever you've vested in at that point is still protected. A past benefit feature, it can't be taken away. Taking up on the Zoom meeting, are you?
Say payroll activity. Yes, and work in January.
I don't know how specifically it works for this local, if you're telling me that you would get a paycheck in January for all of February. I wouldn't see payroll activity in January, in February, in your example. I wouldn't see any pay activity in February unless it was maybe a holiday, or if there's something like I don't know if you have birthday pay or an optional payoff or something. Unless you had something else going on, I would see no activity. But in your example, I would already see that you're employed through February, even if you didn't have service, from a payroll perspective. But the problem, and this is why I caution people, this is why I will tell you specifically, have a little cushion in there, because I'm not going to know until about 2 months later whether or not you made something. If it starts involving service levels and ages and things like that, it could be that I don't find out until about 2 months later, because we receive payroll information and HR information, and then we process it about 4 to 6 weeks behind that. So you don't want the letter from us or the call from us that says, oh, by the way, that $3,800 is now $2,400. You get a real sick feeling in your stomach if that would ever happen, right? So make sure you cross the thresholds and you take care of business from your end of the arrangement here. Other questions? Because I am well over, I'm sure what my lunch time was. Based on the profile you just described, I would assume you are, but if you go to the calculator, it'll tell you you are. Okay? So based on the profile you described, I assume you are. Okay.